Please welcome the futurist who's helping corporate real estate leaders navigate the human renaissance in our exponential age, Anders Sorman-Nilsson. Wow. G'day. How you going? Good. Can you all make sense of my slightly weird Swedish Australian accent so far? Yeah, fantastic. Just making sure this slightly weird signal is getting picked up by some of the more analog and some of the more digital radio antenna out there. Yeah, if you're an introvert, just nod. Okay. If you're an extrovert, please don't hold back. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as a futurist, which basically means my mum has absolutely no idea what I actually do for a living. She calls me her son, the one who used to be a lawyer, who's now a glorified astrologer. There's no one like your family to tell you what you actually truly do for a living. Does anyone else struggle to explain to your elders, your peers, family, what you actually do for work? Okay, I'm not alone. All right, fantastic. Although you're actually in honorable professions, not glorified astrologers. But as a futurist, I'm also very much of a traditionalist and, dare I say, a little bit of a humanist as well. And in this AI-led era of the robots, I'm obsessing about the role of humans in that increasingly digitized future. And to explore for a moment why on earth a futurist would claim to be a humanist, let me just take you back into the past for a moment in time before we cover 6 megatrends shaping your professions, back to the 1910s in my native city of Stockholm, Sweden. To a time that was just a little simpler. Things were a little quieter, a little slower. Things were either this or that. They were binary, ones or zeros. In fact, they were so simple that back in those days, people only wore black or white clothing. Now this here was the urban vista that once upon a time greeted a man by the name of Georg Johansson, or the son of Johan, as it sounds like in Sweden. Johansson, Johansson, as we say in Australian. As the second oldest son on the family farm, he had few inheritance rights, and as a result, he had to make his own commercial, entrepreneurial future in the city of Stockholm. And his commercial opportunity after completing a retail apprenticeship and collecting his venture capital for 6 years was to open up the doors in 1916 to his first menswear store to dress the increasingly sophisticated Swedish gentlemen of that era. And his business opportunity was all about the face-to-face, the belly-to-belly, the personally bespoke, tailored portfolio of clothing. It gets cold in Sweden in winter time. And of course, this was a time before TikTok dancing, before YouTube, before Snapchat, when looking into a camera was still very much of a technological novelty. And in a cap nod of approval to his family heritage, to his family farm, as he became a man of commerce, he decided to change his surname from Johansson, or the son of Johan, to the man from the southern farm, or in Swedish, Georg Sorman. He's my great-grandfather, and as you can tell, he must have been a bit of a futurist because he's got a great haircut, a cool little pocket square, and we share some genealogical traits with North Korean dictators. And he invested in the latest technology of that era, the neon sign, to win the then analog hearts and the analog minds of yesteryear's customers. But for my mother, Birgitta, who looks amazing for a 106-year-old, as you can tell, we moisturize in our family, and she tells me what to wear every day, and she tells me that Harry high pants is coming back into fashion. For her, the business environment has shifted underneath her feet as people are digitizing their behaviors. And today, the customer will walk into the store, share some banter, as we say. They'll get free intellectual property for my mum. She'll tell them about the family businesses around the world that she sources her goods from. And then the customer will say, while scanning a few barcodes and to get a 5% discount from amazon.com/fashion to their real-time comparative pricing cloud, they say, hey, we'll think about it. And you know they're not going to think about it. They then exit the store to the sound of a very, very lonely little bell, and then they order the item on Amazon or on Mr. Porter Amazon.com instead. My mum describes this new customer, this new generation, as cyber terrorists. And I think you can understand why. Now, a few years ago, sitting down thinking about my mum's business futures, I wrote a little love letter to my mum called Digilog, How to Win the Digital Minds and the Analog Hearts of Tomorrow's Customers, where I argued that, Mum, the future of business is not just analog and it's not just digital. In fact, it's Digilog. And we must not throw away the analog baby with the digital bathwater. Now, this book has the ears of Fortune 500 executives in Australia at Westpac, our second largest bank. They credit the ideas in this book with them moving from number 4 in terms of retail banking customer satisfaction to number 1. Unfortunately for me, the person I wrote this little love letter for has not yet read my love letter. Who senses a little bit of intergenerational tension? Now, my mum doesn't like change, and I think that's kind of humane. It's very human not to like change. Has anyone ever thought about changing a partner? I don't mean physically exchanging them for somebody else, because I know from personal experience that can be very, very expensive. But like, rather selling them on the concept of keto diets, long walks on the beach, who knows, veganism if you're in California. How does that pan out 21 days after New Year's Eve? The problem, of course, with change is that change doesn't really care whether I like it, you like it, or my mum likes it or not, because it's always going to happen without our permission. And when the rate of external technological innovation, disruption, trumps the rate of internal innovation, curiosity, and learning, sooner or later we'll find ourselves in trouble. And tragically, during the pandemic, in her refusal to lean into the future, my parents and the business at a tender age of 104 years filed for bankruptcy. My mum distrusts the digital world so much, and her rear view mirror was so big, I must continue doing what my father and his father before him did. I don't know if anyone's got a CFO or a CEO who's a little bit similar to my mum, right? Who refuses to lean into the future. Sadly, she filed for bankruptcy. Now, she points her finger at the pandemic, logical conclusion, but the real story here is that her beautiful brand history now doesn't have a future because she refused to digitize, refused to adopt artificial intelligence, refused to adopt new ways of shaping her physical space so that the talent of tomorrow would go there and so that the customers of tomorrow would want to choose to spend time. She's like, history is in these walls. And I was like, I can tell because the color and the paint is coming off. All right. Now, I do have permission, I should just say, from my mum to talk about this and to weather our family laundry. You might feel like you're part of a family therapy session so far. Yeah? She gets paid a little kickback on the blockchain in crypto. All right. All right, let me move forward, ladies and gentlemen. And let's move forward nearly 110 years to the year 2015, when this movie was launched. Who remembers Ex Machina? Cool, now the rest of you have permission to watch this movie as part of your CPD points. Now, Ex Machina, or Ex Machina, as we would say in Aussie, it's a beautiful movie, and it's a movie about the Turing test. What's the Turing test, you might ask? The Turing test, named after computer scientist Alan Turing, is a blind test, an imitation game, where in a blind test where a human is interacting with a robot unknowingly, the robot is so sophisticated that it can fool us into thinking we're interacting with another human being. Does this sound eerily familiar to the here and now that we're now experiencing? Science fiction is now becoming science fact. And when the team behind this movie thought, how are we going to launch a movie about the Turing test being passed, an artificial general intelligence or superintelligence, as it's being rebranded at the moment in Silicon Valley to make it sound even cooler and less scary. When they thought, how are we going to launch this movie? They thought, why don't we launch it at the coolest conference in town? The Corenet 2025 summit on your conference apps. No, they launched it at South by Southwest on the most coolest digital platform available to them at the time, on Tinder. Because they realized that at that conference, people would be geostrategically changing their Tinder passports to Austin, Texas, hoping to go on a hot date later on the evening. And they built a beautiful avatar based upon the looks of the Swedish actress Alicia Vikander, without all the weird cyborg headgear. And unbeknownst to the lovesick puppies, because she's female and also artificially intelligent, she was able to multitask, something us men are incapable of, and flirt with a number of men at the same time, mostly men in that particular instance. And as part of any good marketing conversation, at the end, what do you need is a call to action. Her call to action was, if you've enjoyed this flirtatious conversation and want to see more pretty pictures of me, please go to my Instagram account, which many people did. What do you think awaited them on the Instagram account? A little message saying, "You've been hacked. Here's a promotion and a preview about a movie about the Turing test, which we've now just passed. Case in point." Great marketing campaign, right? Science fiction, easy to say if you're Swedish, is now becoming science fact. And more recently, when OpenAI put ChatGPT through its paces, they thought, let's get our amazing new technology to reach the gold standard on the internet to prove whether you're a human or a robot, the CAPTCHA test. And I don't know about you, but I frequently fail the CAPTCHA test. Anyone else? Okay, clearly a room of robots, or at least cyborgs. Which makes me a little bit nervous about autonomous vehicles when they cannot see a zebra crossing, but that's another story, okay? So they thought, hey, ChatGPT, please hack the CAPTCHA test. And ChatGPT thought long and hard about this, and they thought, why don't we recruit a human on TaskRabbit.com, where you can outsource any task, and get the human to the CAPTCHA test on its behalf. The human got a little bit nervous, a little bit suspicious, and went, hey, why on earth would you ask me to do this? Are you a robot? And the robot went, in an age of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how dare you accuse me of being a robot, gaslighting and manipulating the human into completing the task on its behalf. Science fiction is now fast becoming science fact. Now, our human reactions about this and the way we tend to think about new technologies like artificial intelligence, like robotics, like humanoid robots, tend to be in a very, very linear fashion, like the black line. But technology moves in an exponential, or at least sigmoid curve fashion. And what Roy Amara, scientist and futurist forebear, said about this is that we tend to overestimate the effects of a technology in the short term or short run, but we underestimate it in the long term. And I believe that when it comes to new technologies like artificial intelligence, and there's clearly a conversation now whether it's an AI bubble or not, we kind of hype it in the short term, and then we forget about it. But when we think about other technologies like GPS navigation and the number of American marriages that's saved, or e-commerce, or telemedicine, these are technologies that have fundamentally shifted society over the longer term. And I believe, though, that when it comes to AI, I want to challenge Roy Amara a little bit and say, hey, neither in the short term or the long term must we underestimate this new technology. It is profound, it is exponential, and while we sleep, the machines are learning. When you hear about new technologies, humanoid robots, artificial intelligence, robotics, who just wants to retire before you have to learn any of this new shit? Okay. All right, cool. And that's a really good retirement strategy, because then the robots can never ever steal our jobs. All right. So there's 6 mega trends that I want to cover with you here, and we're already leaning into this topic. This is firstly the idea of Gen AI and native work cultures. Secondly, analog human signal in a world of digital noise. Distributed talent hubs, purpose-driven twin transformation, smart data-driven ecosystems, and finally, biohacking performance and community. Does this sound like a plan? Cool, because there's no plan B, so this is what we have to go with. All right. But I also want to lean into what the talent of the future looks like. And we've done a taxonomy or an ecology of tomorrow's talent, which I call conscious talent, which care about ecology or the environment, data science, technology, your brand story, your brand provenance, the future, but also their health and mental and physical well-being. And you'll see how this plays out as we go through. Equally, I want to invite you into a little bit of a thought experiment. Now, I reckon that pre-mortems are way better than post-mortems. Whoever's ever done a post-mortem? And you're like, that was way too late? But rather, let's do a pre-mortem together, because we can actually design a new workplace outcome before it's too late, as in the case of my mother. And the pre-mortem experience that I want you to lean into for a moment, with a bit of a sense of FOMO, is to imagine that it's now 2035. And on your watch, your company went belly up. What were the trends that you just missed? What were the future signals that you deliberately chose to ignore? And what were the investment decisions, either in yourself, your tech stack, your company, your workplace design, that you just delayed and delayed that led to that demise? And instead, as part of hanging out here at Corenet Global 2025, what change will you make today to prevent that from happening? And if you think this would be a really good slide for your next date night or your next conversation with your children when they're not studying enough for school, then please share this slide on your next date night and let me know how it goes. Just adopt the language a little bit, all right? I'm not giving relationship advice, by the way. Okay. So Gen AI native cultures. Let's have a think about this for a moment and how technology is reshaping our productivity. Back in the 1960s, in the US railway cars industry, in the 1960s, at any one point in time, only 5% of railway cars were actually on the move. And it's not because of the unions or that the railway cars were lazy. It's just that the railway car owners had absolutely no idea where their railway cars actually were. Does this sound similar to your hybrid working from home humans these days? Okay. Now, the railway car owners knew that if they could increase from 5% to 10% the utilization rate, they would only need to own half as many railway cars. Would this be good for their balance sheets, for their P&L, maybe even for the environment? Absolutely. Now we have RFID tags, GPS technology, sensors that show us what our physical assets do all of the time. Same in your offices, to a degree. Who wishes you could invest more in surveillance technology of your working from home staff? I said that. You don't have to talk to HR later on. Okay. But I know it exists, apparently, right? So this is the opportunity to increase our utilization rate and actually get more out of every human being that works for us, or even the AI that in some instances are actually disappointing organizations. Now, these are my two beautiful sons, Lucian and Aurelian. And yes, they're not avatars, they're real human beings. They look like mini Vikings, and no, they're not wearing a wig. Okay. Now, when my sons live with me at Great Mackerel Beach, yes, in the treehouse, I only speak Swedish with them. Okay, carry on the linguistic and the cultural heritage and all of those good things, right? And hopefully I'm not too annoying about it. I think I'm a reasonably good tutor because I want them to inherit some of my cultural values and the Swedishness, and there's probably also parts of my personality that only come out when I'm Swedish, right? Or speaking Swedish with them. And recently, though, I've decided that no matter how good a tutor I am to them, that Duolingo can also help me. Right? Duolingo is an AI-first company. Some of you might use them, right? It's an app where you learn to speak any language, but you also learn to write in any language. And there's, as an 8 and a 4-year-old, there's certain parts of our alphabet that are really complicated. Like we have an extra three, what do you call it, letters that have umlauts. I've never taught these to my kids, but the owl in Duolingo, a gamified user interface personalized for their learning abilities and their learning challenges, has taught them the umlauts times 3. They now write perfectly in Swedish words like smörgåsbord or smorgasbord. You guys have dropped the umlaut because it was too difficult. They know how to spell it, not because of me, but because of the owl. Now, at Duolingo, they're an AI-first company. If you want to hire another human being, you first have to prove at Duolingo with a PowerPoint deck and a presentation why on earth AI couldn't do that job instead. And you'll see similar moves. The default position is no longer just hire another human being, just throw another human being at the problem, right? And at the same time, my little human beings here are learning very, very quickly. In Singapore today, the private tutoring industry with humans is a $1.8 billion Singapore dollar industry. What do you think is going to happen to some of those private human tutors as these guys personalize the learning journey for every psychographic of one, no matter what their learning abilities or disabilities might be? AI-first companies are also leaning into how they can use artificial intelligence for good. And I want to share a quick example out of the United Kingdom of how AI is now being deployed to fight scammers. Tune into this.
My friend, Daisy.
Hello, scammers. I'm your worst nightmare. I'm an AI created by O2 to waste phone scammers' time. So, W's then a dot.
3 times W and then dot.
I think your profession is bothering people, right?
I'm just trying to have a little chat.
It's nearly been an hour! For the love of...
Gosh, how time flies. It's showing me a picture of my cat, Fluffy.
It's showing you the picture of your cat, Fluffy.
Stop calling me dear, you stupid.
Got it, dear. Because while they're busy talking to me, they can't be scamming you. And let's face it, dear, I've got all the time in the world.
And I think all the training data to train Daisy here came from phone calls with my parents who love hanging out and talking to people from contact centers. The key question here, though, and the additional analysis here is in the future, when you're talking to your talent, and maybe even when you're talking to your customers in the future, you won't just be talking to their human being, their authentic self, but also their AI agent that you need to sell on your wares, your ideas, maybe your company's products or services, right? AI agents having conversation with AI agents representing human beings. Yes, science fiction is fast becoming science fact. Now, at the University of California at Berkeley a few years ago, they did some research about technology and about this notion that we can now utilize technology to help us take the robot out of the human, so that we can do less of the menial and the mundane, or as we call it in Australia, the boring shit. Excuse my French, as we say in Australia. So we can increasingly, as human beings, do more of the meaningful and the humane. And they asked the question, if you had a great innovation or automation idea that would lead you to doing different work as a result of that technology being implemented, would you actually share it culturally in your organization? 37% of people said, yeah, we'd share it. The rest went, nah. Then they changed the question slightly and asked the question, if you believed the deployment of that idea that you have would lead you to doing better, more meaningful, more humane work, would you share that idea? And magically, 87% of people said, of course we would. Humans going, different. Humans going, better. Yes, let's go for it. Ask yourself in your own company, in your own culture, are you more like, different? Or are you selling people on the notion of better, right? Find nuances that actually enable us to lean into, to be intentional, to be deliberate about a new workplace culture, so that you don't constantly get the Gen Z stare back at you all of the time, right? These people are not sharing their ideas with the rest of the organization. Who's heard about the Gen Z stare? Who's experienced it? It's brutal. Okay, all right. All right. So, analog human signal and digital noise. Let me tune into this notion for a quick moment. Now, in my business, when we're not winning rugby league championships in Australia, I don't know why a rugby league team needs a Futurist in residence, but I'm happy they do. I also run a co-working space in Australia. Part of it's my studio, and then I've got lots of other businesses in there. So I love the idea of co-working and redefining what the future of the workplace looks like. But when I'm not there and when I'm not wearing a suit, I hang out in my tree house at Great Mackerel Beach. And as any good Swede would do, I chop wood. Who else likes to chop wood? Other people have way better interests and hobbies, but this is what I do for fun. Unfortunately, seemingly, my technique is not equivalent to me being middle-aged. So I injured my back recently on the L5, on the spine, and I had to go to my doctor. And my doctor said, hey, Dr. Erin Noonan at Newport Doctors, and she said, hey, Anders, I didn't train to be a doctor for 12 years, just so I could become a medical scribe. She goes, remember last time you were here and I had to turn my back onto you to type the notes in to keep my electronic medical health records? And I went, yeah, that was rude. She was like, would you mind if I now put Heidi Health, an AI medical scribe, on the table to record this conversation? Because did you know that in Australia, on average, 80% of what gets said in a patient conversation with a medical professional gets forgotten. 80%. So she goes, what the AI medical scribe will do for you, Anders, is it will translate this conversation into Year 4 English, so you understand what actually happened and what steps you need to take to get your back into good functional order. Pretty valuable. For her, she goes, I used to do 2 to 3 hours of paperwork every day, the menial, the mundane, the boring shit. She goes, I can see more patients now. My wait lines are shorter. This is human-centric technology that also helps her on the side, by the way, make a little bit more money. And it fills in her electronic medical records for her, keeping her compliant. At the same time, it will write any referral letter to a specialist on her behalf, so she does not have to do it. Is she able to provide better human-centric, empathetic signal in a world of lots of digital noise? Absolutely. And the next step to this is what can happen when her AI agent talks to my AI agent to deliver even better patient-centric outcomes. And here's an example of that.
I am your friendly, all-knowing GP. I just got the report from your radiologist. Your cortisone spinal tap last week was successful, and the referral to your Medicare-funded physio appointments has been automatically generated. And we have taken the liberty of proactively booking your first appointment based on your shared Google Cal availability. We cross-checked your timings with your avatar. Payments will happen seamlessly in the background, so you don't need to worry about lodging any claims. We know a picture says 1,000 words and video says 1,000 images. So click on the link below to access your Radiology for Dummies report. I hope your recovery goes well and that you will be back to chopping wood at your cabin in no time, you Viking you.
So comedic timing's a little bit off, hand gestures not quite as smooth. But remember, this is as bad as machine learning or AI will ever be. 2 minutes of recording your face and your gestures and your vocals. I don't have an American accent, but I can speak this into any language, right? HeyGen.ai delivers this on my behalf. Now, this might also freak you out because you can go, hey, this could make our CEO say anything on an earnings call or in other communications on X, right? Or on Instagram, whatever it happens to be. But would you agree when I can now speak 200 odd languages and I can deliver the same message in Tagalog, right? In Sinhalese, Singlish, or Finnish, this could actually be utilized from an L&D, a HR perspective, delivering messages in any language, right? Again, it's human-centric, analog signal in a world of digital noise. And I believe the fundamental formula for success for any professional in the future is actually to lean into two things at the same time. To lean into our fundamental emotional intelligence, our unique intelligence, and our creative intelligence, EQ, UQ, and CQ. Just like I'm trying to do with my sons, but also just like with Duolingo, lean into digital augmentation to create the best, most empathetic workplaces or professional, personal brands that we ever could. Remember this, lean into your humanity and create workplaces that are actually cognitive enhancers that enable your talent to do the same. EQ, UQ, CQ, plus digital augmentation for empathy. Digital is now also, from smart brands, becoming a type of digital nutrition. Did you know today that digital content is somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in a story? I'll say that again. Digital content nowadays is somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in a story. Now, recently, Dr. Erin Noonan said to me, she said, Anders, I think your oldest son, Lucian, might have a little bit of pre-anxiety. Unfortunately, in Australia, it takes 9 months between a referral and going to see a human child psychologist. So she said, let me prescribe you an app instead. Let me prescribe you an app. So she goes, what stories is he into? And I said, well, in a very age-inappropriate fashion, I've introduced them to Star Wars, which might explain the pre-anxiety. So she goes, you should download Headspace, a $3 billion app. Doesn't cost that to download. And now, based upon her prescription, Lucian and I, every night before bed, sit down and we do breath work with Yoda to calm his nervous system and equally to calm his dad's nervous system so we can get to the really, really good storytelling faster. At ABZ Labs, they're now working with American war veterans who suffer from PTSD through similar digital nutrition, somebody else's brain chemistry wrapped in a story that can boost serotonin levels or lower cortisol levels. What this also does for the rest of us is it asks questions of all of us. How great is your talent experience? How great is your customer experience? When we have this to compare with, digital nutrition that can raise our happiness chemicals and lower our stress hormones. Isn't this amazing? Mindful technology, right? Human signal in a world of digital noise. The question is whether we're happy to lean into that notion. Now, back in 1967 in Sweden, the Swedish government decided we were going to shift from left lane driving to right lane driving because that is the future of transport, still to happen in certain parts of the world, if you're British or Australian. Now, this was every ambulance chasing lawyer's Disneyland. Right? And the big change management mantra from the government was just smile. We're all just new at this. Isn't that a wonderful change management mantra? You feel free to borrow it. Just go, hey, trying to launch this new AI system or this new CRM system, whatever it happens to be. Just smile. We're all just new at this. Right? Let's compare and contrast that to a world of the machines where they're learning more quickly than we are. And just imagine for a moment sending your kids, your nieces, your nephews, maybe even your elderly grandparents confidently out across this intersection in their wheelchair on the way to the retirement village. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, over the next 10 years, we'll be able to save 1.1 million human lives courtesy of autonomous vehicles, of aware vehicles. When I recently returned from my most recent overseas holiday in Liguria, Italy, unscathed, I personally welcome the day when we have no humans behind the wheels, at least in Liguria, Italy. Sorry to all the Italians in the audience. And when I shared this with one of my clients at Bharti Airtel in Mumbai, India, they said, Anders, this is nothing new. This is what it looks like in Mumbai, India, every day of the week. Plus, we have semi-autonomous cows as well. I'm going over to Chennai next week, so I'll get to experience this again. My mum always says, Anders, the digital world feels digitally dehumanized, but I would argue, in fact, courtesy of human-centric technologies, we'll be able to code for humanity and better humanistic experiences where we can encourage our teams, our talent, to bring their best selves to work, their creativity, their innovation. To do that, though, we have to flip out of a fixed mindset and towards an AI growth mindset, right? And I'm borrowing here from the works of Carol Dweck at Stanford University School of Psychology, and we've added an AI lens to that to challenge ourselves and go, hey, is this truly my best work? Or can I deliver even better work when the technology helps me take the robot out of the human so I can do more of the meaningful and the humane as opposed to the menial and the mundane? I give up. No. Start using a different strategy. Start connecting with the people in the room, because no doubt somebody knows how to prompt engineer or to prime the AI, or the way I like to call it, ask questions. Because AI now speaks human. It used to be that you had to be a software engineer, or the coolest language in town would be Java or Python. Now the coolest coding language in town is your language. It's that intuitive now. What about the talent hubs of the future? Where are they and how are they distributed? I was speaking at a law firm partners summit recently, and I started thinking about what it cost to fly about 100 law firm partners to an amazing luxury resort in the north of Queensland, out on the Great Barrier Reef. Started doing the numbers in my head, and then my math skills failed me, so then I went to Claude.ai instead. And of course, Claude told me that this would be running into potentially the millions of dollars for running this law firm retreat, including partners and families and everyone else who had to go there. A great engagement strategy, right? But I'm always like, why on earth? I mean, we should still have this conference because it's a great offsite. But sometimes I'm like, why are you investing all this money in offsites when your onsite could be awesome? I know for a fact this particular law firm's on-site office's physical workplace is not awesome. I'm like, just give it to the corporate real estate professionals. They'll sort you out so people are actually productive for 365 days a year. I mean, less holidays, right? But we obsess with taking our teams to Burning Man or whatever it happens to be. That'd be cool, all right? All right, next year's conference maybe. Go to BlackRock. But why do we not invest in the on-site, but we obsess with off-sites? Equally, where is the talent of tomorrow wanting to hang out? Well, you could go onto nomadlist.com and just see where the digital nomads, the talent of the future, actually want to go and live, where they rate different cities based upon the number of hours of sunlight, how close it is to great snowboarding locations, how good the surf is, how good the internet is, and what the cost of living is. They're doing their arbitrage already. Are you following these talent pools or thinking about these as the emerging second-tier cities of the future? Now, we all know the story about Austin and how that's been booming and taking lots of Silicon Valley talent away and companies are relocating. But like, what's next? Is it the Research Triangle in Durham, Chapel Hill, and Raleigh in North Carolina? Is it Chennai in India, where I'm heading next week, for example, for NCR Atleos? Or could it be Brisbane, a second-tier, formerly second-tier city in Australia, hosting the 2032 Olympics? Wherever the talent is, we need to start tapping into it and thinking about what is a more more inexpensive way to actually connect with them and house them. Next point, purpose-driven twin transformation. What's twin transformation, you might ask? It's when you pursue digital transformation and sustainable transformation at the same time. Twin transformation is something that I believe today is absolutely key. It's key because increasingly talent want to work for organizations that are purpose-driven, that tune into their ikigai. The notion of the ikigai is your life's purpose. It comes from Okinawa in Japan. And it's the overlapping concentric circles of doing what you're good at, what earns you some money, doing what you love, and increasingly doing what the world needs. This is attractive to a generation of conscious talent. And of course, the data bears out that the more conscious, the more purpose-driven organizations are, the higher their performance actually is. 90% of workers at purpose-driven organizations reported feeling engaged compared to 32% at other organizations. Right? This is from Harvard University studies. So being purpose-driven and having a core purpose is absolutely important, but also the idea of twin transformation, of always taking the approach of driving digital transformation and sustainable transformation at the same time. Let me give you an example to frame this up. One of our companies or our clients that we work with is Telia. It's like the AT&T of the Nordics. Recently, they were asked by the Norwegian government to rethink toll roads. And they thought, well, why do we even need to build the physical infrastructure and whack a bit of plastic on everybody's car when we've got all the mobility data on these devices that are also in your car? And today, we're all used to, via Uber, having a seamless non-event payment on our phones in the background, saving the Norwegian government 1 billion Norwegian kroner every year because they virtualize something that used to be physical. In your office space, are there physical things that actually you don't need anymore? What can you learn from Telia to virtualize, to deliver something better that at the same time also saves on the carbon emissions associated with building the unnecessary physical infrastructure? Oftentimes, we herald the cloud as being this massive virtual event that is sort of ethereal and that we can't touch. But the cloud is just somebody else's copper. And today, if the internet was a country, it would be the 5th largest emitter of carbon in the world. So while it's amazing to virtualize everything, we have to ensure we also do it with green power, green energy. And ask the question, if you're in data centers, for example, what's powering those data centers? The total power usage driven by AI because of AI by next year, globally, is going to be the same as the entire nation of Japan. This is how much AI consumes. And if we don't do it with renewable energy, we'll also burn the planet while making everything amazing and enabling everyone to TikTok dance. Okay. All right, we're coming towards the end, ladies and gentlemen. Smart data-driven ecosystems. Let me tune you into this for a brief moment. Who's watched Black Mirror and Bandersnatch? Anybody? Another piece of research you can do. Great series. In this particular series, they thought, let's just build a bunch of different sort of pick your own ending. So as the viewer, you can choose whether the protagonist jaywalks or stops at the red light, whether they take the blue pill, the red pill, or maybe both the pills, to make it really, really interesting. They had to create massive amounts of scenarios in the future to make this experiment really, really immersive. Now, what's Netflix doing here behind the scenes? So they can offer you up the best digital nutrition and the best content, is that they're capturing data about you. Small data and big data. So they can drive even better engagement in the future and tell their creatives to design even better plot lines in the future. Does your internal communication, your internal thought leadership, digital assets, do they get shared as easily as what happens at Netflix? If a salesperson goes out to make a call to convert a piece of business, do they get delivered the best slide deck, what worked, what didn't, the learnings, etc.? We all have to become Netflix. Because the only way to truly be talent-centric today is to be data-centric. The only way to be talent-centric today is to be data-centric. And we're learning from the big tech players today as well, right? Who here gets a little bit nervous when your iPhone, your Samsung, or your Oppo battery starts running low? I'm sorry for raising all these traumatic experiences for you, by the way. Some of you just had to check your phone whether you'll actually get it through the day or not. So imagine being a Tesla owner or a co-financier with a bank a couple of hurricane seasons ago, and you're fleeing from Hurricane Irma in Florida in your Tesla with your most beloved human beings, your most beloved belongings, and you're feeling pretty good about being an early adopter of new technologies. Little clap on the shoulder, until all of a sudden your Tesla battery starts running on low. What kind of passive-aggressive or aggressive-aggressive glances do you think you're getting from the passenger seat next to you? Until all of a sudden a little message comes across the dashboard from Elon Musk who goes, "Fret not, human. We've just remotely upgraded your battery via the cloud so you can safely get out of harm's way." True story. What do you think your relationship to that previously cold piece of technology has now become? It's become anthropomorphized, humanized, right? It also sets our expectations of any piece of technology, any workplace experience, that we want people to solve our problems in a clever way before they even occur. Predictive talent experiences. What can you do today to do that? Ask yourself now, how can you get 2x the result with half the effort? Yes, through technology, but also through human creativity. Secondly, which old analog processes don't offer you any actionable data insights and need upgrading immediately? What's the compound effect of my competition adopting the right exponential technology while we simply don't by 2035? And finally, what would our competition not want us to do next? Pick one of these questions, obsess about it for the next couple of days, and make sure you take that solution back into your organizations. Finally, biohacking communities and biohacking human performance. Now, some of you might have heard about these beautiful places on Earth called the blue zones. They tend to be around the equator, like Okinawa, Loma Linda, Nicoya, Sardinia, Icario, etc. Amazing places where people just naturally live to 100, right? They're over-intakes in centenarians. And people live there and they're happy. They contribute even when they're old. And I go, isn't that an amazing workplace? Now, not all of us have the benefits of, spending centuries, fine-tuning what we eat and the cultures in these places, which revolve around belonging and, very importantly, having a glass of wine at 5 p.m. Tick. Right? But we can also biohack our ways there as well. Nowadays, there's people like this. Brian Johnson, a 48-year-old, yes, multi-millionaire who spends $4 million on his health every year through supplements and other regimes. Right? Very disciplined life. All his biometrics indicate that he's 18 years of age. His mantra is to cheat death and the end of death. And I sometimes think about workplaces of the future and I go, wouldn't it be amazing if we all had these blue zones? And we did that through great technologies, through great biometrics. We're now literally wearing our hearts on our sleeves, and we're able to, through great workplace design and a focus on wellness, etc., actually help people make better decisions about their blood, sweat, and tears. And yes, you'll be happy to know that I'm back to chopping wood, right? But because of the Aura Ring, I also know that how strenuous the 168 steps up from the beach to my cabin will feel like in 10 years in the future. Today, if you have one of these on your elderly grandmother's arm, 10 days before she might suffer a fall, the Apple Watch will alert the rest of the family that her gait, as measured by the wearable, indicates that she's likely to suffer an event. Wouldn't this be amazing to stop things like workplace burnout or workplace presenteeism or quiet quitting? To have better conversations. Why? Because we're now future focused. Let me give you one final example here before we wrap up. At UPS, a little technology company, you might argue, a few years ago, at an event similar to this a few years ago, they said, let's look at the data. 22.5% of all vehicle accidents in the United States happen when we turn into oncoming traffic. Right? We have trucks out of action, lawsuits, etc. Why don't we just stop turning left? Why don't we just stop turning left? This harebrained human idea of creativity, right, had some merit. And they knew when they started putting technology and sensors into their equipment, their trucks, GPS, RFID, etc. They now credit that harebrained human idea with them delivering 350,000 more parcels to happy customers every year. And now the AI Orion continuous route optimization network keeps building on the foundation of that human ingenuity. My question, my challenge to all of you today is, what's your equivalent of no longer turning left? How do you challenge the holy cows in your organization? 3 things to take away from today. Firstly, start experimenting. Deploy an AI space agent, right? Stop managing buildings and get the AI to enhance your cognition. Run a 90-day pilot. Auto book rooms, predict occupancy, optimize HVAC, for example, save 15-30% on energy because of AI. Get real utilization data, make smarter portfolio decisions. Plant a flag in an emerging hub. Go where the talent lives, not where you wish they'd come back to. Run a 12-month test. Do a flex space, 20 to 50 people. Measure cost savings and the retention. Find the emerging tech hubs and talent hubs of the future. And finally, biohack your office into a cognitive enhancer. I know what it feels like to work solo. And when I work with other human beings, I find that it's a cognitive enhancer for me. It brings, hopefully, the best out of me, as opposed to when I'm just working from home. Design spaces that unlock human potential, not just house bodies. Transform the 20% into performance spaces, circadian lighting, biophilic design, movement zones, quiet rooms, social hubs. Yes, yes, the blue zones of the future. And finally, because futurists never leave you with 3 bullet points, but we ask questions to get your own cognitive wheels into motion. If your career success over the next 5 years depended on one real estate decision you make today, what would that decision be and why? When today's 8th graders are CEOs in 2050, what will they say about the real estate decisions you made in 2025? Will you be remembered as visionaries or as the leaders who missed the transformation? And what's one thing your smartest competitor is doing with their real estate strategy today that you wish you had thought of first? Ladies and gentlemen, start preparing for a sustainable, a digitally transformed, and an even more human-centric future than we could have ever imagined before. Because it's where you, your kids, and your grandkids are going to spend the rest of your lives. See you in that future. Thank you very much. Thank you.